Welcome in episode number 93 of the St0ner Sports Radio podcast. It's been a week. We've digested what we can from the national title game. We'll let you know how we feel about it and break it down in depth. Zach's got some rants for us. We'll tune in to his ramblings of insane rage. So stay put with that. Thunder update, NFL playoff update, and you want a long shot for a national title pick, we got them for you. And what can you throw $10 on that may end up just changing your year into a fantastic betting season? Zach, how are we doing on this Be Happy Saturday?
Hey, we're doing good. We're doing good. The Thunder, they're rolling. We can't seem to beat the Mavericks. That's kind of concerning. But we're doing what we can. We have a national champion. I think that's important.
Yeah, Notre Dame and Ohio State. Me and Zach both were rolling with the Fighting Irish. We just kind of felt like, they had a really good chance to finish the deal here. And sure enough, they could not do it. Zach, they could not do it. And Ohio State wins the national title. I'm going to go ahead and just hand this over to you, Zach. Kind of what was your takeaway from kind of how this game started and then kind of progressed into maybe just halftime, and then we'll kind of expand on that.
Yeah, so this game to me looked, in my opinion, over at halftime, right? So it's 21-7 going into halftime here. And Ohio State's just firing on all cylinders. Obviously, they have a scoreless first quarter. It's looking like this is going to be a close game going in, right? 7-0, Notre Dame's winning at the end of the first quarter. Nothing really crazy happened. Notre Dame drove down the field in a really nice opening drive, had Riley Leonard kind of punch it in at the end there. Riley Leonard looked fantastic on that opening drive. But, after the scripted drives were over, Notre Dame didn't really look good at all, especially on defense. Second quarter, just letting plenty. Will Howard just dicing up Notre Dame in that second quarter, getting 3 touchdowns right there, 21-7 going into halftime. And at that point, to me, it felt over. But the first half isn't really the story of the game.
No, it really wasn't. But I think you and I both agree after that opening drive, we were kind of looking at each other like, this is how Michigan beat them, just pushing them down the field, long drives, not giving them the football, and just running the ball down their throat. And so it was very impressive that opening drive. But like you said, those are scripted drives. Those are the best drives teams have all game normally. So we expected, good stuff from Notre Dame's offensive coordinator and the job that he does there. And on the other end, Ohio State did the same thing. They had a good drive that got them 7 points. And, next thing you know, it's 3 and out for Notre Dame. Boom, here comes Ohio State again, touchdown. Here comes Notre Dame again. Boom, 3 and out. It was like, it was concerning, and when you were, like you said, going into halftime, it was like, man, if they don't do something, to start this third quarter, it could get, real ugly. And worst case scenario kind of happened, right, Zach? They come out and they score a touchdown. It's 28-7, and it's like, boy, this is getting real bad. And then boom, 3 and out again, and it's just you don't win football games if you can't score against teams that have a high-powered offense, or at least the capability of doing such. And it just, they turned it over on downs is what happened after that touchdown. And that led to a field goal. It's 31-7. And just kind of where were we at there?
Well, that's the thing. I think the third quarter was where Marcus Freeman kind of lost them the game, right? Because we're talking about, one, you have that fake punt that didn't work. That looked bad. Just a bad coaching decision in a horrible scenario there. Kind of playing for a national championship there, and then obviously get that 3 and out. Judkins, he punches one in for what like a 60-70 yard run. and 28-7, like you said, you bring out the. Or no, you did. It wasn't the field goal to put Ohio State up 31-7 was right after the fake punt, wasn't it? I think it was the.
Correct. It was
That's right.
after the 4th and
Yeah,
2 fake punt.
yeah, so you set them up there for an easy field goal to make it pretty much unreachable at that point. But Notre Dame, they kind of had a really good fourth quarter to almost pull it together until Ohio State just kind of shut it down there at the end. How are we feeling about the fourth quarter? I feel like that was the story of the game for me.
Yeah, no, you have to look at the way that, like you said, they set him up for that field goal. And the problem I had with the fake punt was this, Zach, was the biggest problem I had with the fake punt. You were going for it on 4th and 2 all game with your normal offense out there. In what world are you down that amount in that kind of territory and trying to convince Ohio State that you're going to punt the football? That was the problem for me. I was like, they're not going to punt this. I was like, everybody and their mom was like, they're not punting this. They went on 4th and 2 every single time on that opening drive. They've gone for it on 4th and short every time they've had the opportunity to. You're going to punt now down by this much? No, they were never going to punt that ball, and I think it was not something that really caught anybody by surprise. And I think that was the problem. Was you would have just been a lot better off doing what you did, which was just having Riley Leonard on the football field with the ball in his hands, trying to get a 4th and 2. I mean, I didn't understand that. And then, like you said, fourth quarter happens. Technically still the third quarter. You have the touchdown drive after the field goal, and you get the 2-point conversion, and it's like, okay, 16-point game, and then what happens then, Zach? You get the gift, right? The huge pass to Egbuka. He's running down the field, and oopsie daisies, the football comes out, and all of a sudden, it's a 2-possession game with plenty of time to go. And then what happened, Zach? Tell me what happened, because you know what happened? Marcus Freeman decided to go into a shell. Tell us what he did.
Well, quite frankly, why are you kicking the field goal there? That's my question, right? Like, you're down 16. Why are you kicking the field goal? I mean, what was the specific situation? Fourth and goal from the 9-yard line. 4th and goal from the 9-yard line. You're down 16 points.
9 minutes to go. 9 minutes to go.
His thought process, right? I guess his thought process is he thinks he can get the ball back twice.
Yeah, well, that's not the only thing, but I think the other factor was he didn't have to go for 2 if he did score either time. He could just kick the field goal and they can win. They don't have to worry about 2-point conversions if you kick that field goal as well. And I think that was also in the back of his head. He was like, man, I don't know if we can get 3 2-point conversions against this defense. This field goal eliminates the need to even do that. And yes, I think I can get the ball back 2 more times. And guess what, Zach? They technically could have got the ball back 2 more times. If it wasn't for the fourth quarter long bomb to Jeremiah Smith to convert that 3rd down, they get the ball back twice, and then it becomes less of a question. But now, again, you're forced to, if they had gotten the ball back, go for 2 again because you'd gotten it twice. But, you had to, that's because you missed the field goal. I mean, it makes sense, but at the same time, it's just like 4th and 9, like, I feel like you could have picked it up. I mean, and then you wouldn't have to worry about needing to get the ball back with 2 minutes to go, and maybe you weren't going to be in man-to-man coverage on 3rd and 8 and send a blitz, which, again, I don't understand. It was the same mistake Arizona State made against Texas. It's like, it's 3rd and long, just sit back in zone coverage and holy fuck, keep everything in front of you. Like, it was just, make the open field tackle. I mean, it's just, I never understood. I mean, a one-on-one coverage with Jeremiah Smith, are you nuts? I mean, it was a mistake.
Yeah, because what did they send? They send that Gray guy, right? Christian Gray to single coverage on Jeremiah Smith there. I mean, are you thinking that he's a better corner than Jeremiah Smith is a receiver? Because this isn't Penn State. You're not keeping up with this guy. You gotta have someone sitting back. You gotta have a safety sitting back at the very least on Jeremiah Smith. Not to mention the fact that it looked like they were running Engage 8 out there.
Yeah, that's the other thing is we talked about this, Zach, about how they have undersized defensive linemen in comparison to some of these bigger offensive lines, and that was a big problem on this third down as well. They send everybody, but nobody can get there. The linebacker gets picked up easily by the running back, and then one of the offensive linemen double teamed a guy by himself and allowed Will Howard to have enough time to throw it deep. Man, I mean that's the biggest issue was they were sending extra guys, but they just weren't getting there, and they'd been getting there against every single other team because maybe the outside edge rusher just had and just the offenses they were going up against kind of dictated kind of how they were able to attack, but this just wasn't working out for them at all.
No, yeah, I mean they couldn't put pressure on Will Howard, and I think we talked about this. Prior to the national championship, is that Notre Dame has had one of the better pass rushes all year, but it hasn't been against guys that are Ohio State's size. They got through on Penn State, and we were thinking, if they can put pressure on Will Howard, they have a real good chance of winning this game. They couldn't put pressure on Will Howard, and we saw exactly what happened. I mean, the offense was just working and flowing. I mean, shout out to Will Howard. After transferring from Kansas State, this guy goes and he gets a national championship with Ohio State, possibly coming back next season. Um, do you think he can do it again?
I mean, look, I mean they're the odds favorite right now to win it. Um, but I just don't know. You're missing a lot of pieces. I think that's going to be kind of the big thing is if you can get some of those guys back you need back, great. If not, obviously they'll hit the portal and try to go get some money elsewhere. But it looks like they'll retain, Smith and Ibuka. Or not Ibuka, but Smith at least. And I think one of their defensive guys, I think, was the other guy they listed that they were trying to really keep. I think it was a corner or something. I forgot, but I know Smith was one of them. They were offering him like $4 million to come back to Ohio State because they knew that he could get big money elsewhere, obviously, considering how talented he is, and teams are now willing to pay because there's no cap. So I mean, it's now becoming how much money do you want to match, and how many donors can we get behind that, and also trying to rebook Jim Knowles, which is another issue. But I mean, like that's also something they have to factor into the money thing over there in Columbus. We'll see how that kind of pans out. Um,
Yeah, talking about that real quick, there are a couple of rumors floating around about Jim Knowles. Obviously, Oklahoma's a big one because of his family being from here, and it's they've had talks, and it's some people were reporting that it might have even been a done deal. I don't think that's the case yet because there are also some Penn State rumors flying around that he might, jump ship and go to Penn State. And I can understand why, you don't want to stay under, a coach who just kind of secured what I think is his seat for a long time. You go to somewhere like Penn State or OU, and a head coach gets fired because of playoff failures or regular season failures in OU's case. Then he has the opportunity to be promoted to head coach at a really really prestigious program. So I think that's kind of his motivation for wanting to leave now after Ryan Day kind of secured his spot at least for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely something to think about. But like I said, that factors into the money you can also give to your players.
Yeah.
I would assume. So I mean that's going to be something to think about. Um, but when you look at this box score, Zach, I mean you hold them to 13 points in the second half. If you're Notre Dame, if you could have done that in the first half, I mean this is a completely different ball game. It
Yeah.
just took too long for Al Golden to really get his defense to do what they did in that second half, which was force punts and force turnovers and force field goals. I mean, if they would have done that all game long, I don't think Notre Dame loses this football game. I'm just going to be honest. I don't know if they could have. I mean, they could have lost 15 to or I guess 24 to 23 on field goals, 8 field goals. But I just don't see that being the case when you're having possessions as long as Notre Dame's having possessions. And that's why, again, Zach, I take it back. I mean, why go for that field goal with 9 minutes to go when your offense is not built to go quick?
I don't know. It's just a huge coaching error there. I mean, I think it's playing too conservative when you definitely shouldn't be playing conservative in that situation. But also, you talk about how Ohio State's able to blow the lid off this game. The only simple fact is that Notre Dame had to put the top back on the defense. I mean, they were just getting blown up in the secondary because it seemed like they were just committing to this pass rush and trying to blitz Will Howard. And every time you have a receiver that's faster than anyone on your team running up the middle, or you get a situation where they're passing so heavily that you stop worrying about the run, and then Judkins goes off for 70. I mean, this is how this game really got out of hand. It's just defensive errors and defensive mistakes on Notre Dame's part. The offense honestly wasn't really that bad. You get shut out in the second quarter, that's it. You put up 8 points in the third, you put up 8 points in the fourth. I don't, and you still score in the first quarter, and you don't have that answered in the first quarter. I don't blame this one on the offense at all. If I'm Notre Dame, I'm blaming it all on Marcus Freeman's ability to call a defense.
Yeah, I mean, it was rough to watch as far as how that game kind of worked itself along. It made itself a little interesting, corner of in that when it was down to 23-31. It's like, oh man, they get a stop here, like that's gonna be it. And obviously, they tack on the field goal to seal it. But it's just, I don't know what kind of game we were supposed to be expecting. I was thinking it was going to be a little bit more competitive early on. And the thing is, it did get competitive. It just got competitive a little too late. I think if, it would have been 23-31, early in the fourth quarter, and, Ohio State gets that field goal and makes it a two possession game, then maybe we're talking about something that seems a little bit more, I don't know, classic.
Yeah, this one didn't really have a great feel to it. It kind of seemed like we were watching a kind of a bully session. I mean, it was belt to ass pretty much in that, especially in that middle eight that we always
Mhm.
talk about Notre Dame. You know, Notre Dame is typically winning that middle eight, but this time Ohio State just kind of shut them out there, and I think it was over after that. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, I think a few minutes into the third quarter, this game was over.
Yeah, I think so too. I think everybody kind of felt that, and it was good that Notre Dame didn't give up. I commend them for not giving up. I think you have to do that, keep the pressure on a team like
Yeah.
Ohio State, because we don't know how mentally tough they are. They could have almost cracked. I mean, you don't pick up that third down. Who knows how Riley Leonard does in those last 2 minutes? I mean, I give you the benefit of the doubt. It would have came down to time. You know what I'm saying? It would have probably been a little bit hairy. I don't know if they would have been able to pull it off. It just didn't seem like they had that kind of luck going for them. It didn't really seem like it, at least. But I mean, that would have maybe that would have changed how I feel about this game. But it just felt like you said, there was no point in time where I didn't feel like Ohio State was in control of this.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like only, in my opinion, only the first quarter is where we kind of felt
Yeah.
like, okay, Notre Dame might have something here, especially in that first drive. It's kind of the only time where we felt that. But I would say like both of us probably, and a lot of people in that situation are probably thinking this one's scripted. What's going to happen next drive? And we saw what happened. So I commend Ryan Day for kind of winning the coaching battle here. And I think we have to talk about him being a top three, top five coach in the sport now, even though we don't want to. We really don't want to, but I think it's time we have to, because he pulled this team together after a tough season, really. Losing two games to Oregon, or you lose to Oregon once by 1 point. I mean, that's a tough one to come back from, and then you lose to Michigan. That's obviously just demoralizing, and the ability to come back from that, still win the national championship, beat Oregon in the rematch. I mean, that's you gotta commend them for that.
I mean, I guess. I mean, I'm not happy about it. I still think he's
Yeah.
soft. He's still soft. I mean, look, man, you got lucky. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, great path, I guess. I mean, look, I mean, my Ducks play the worst game they've ever played all season long in the worst spot they possibly could. You
Yep.
pretty much cakewalked yourself into this moment, and because Georgia's missing their starting quarterback, I think you're unable to really be challenged by somebody that could hang with the type of offense you trot out on the field. I mean, the firepower was just too much, and we were really banking. I mean, me and you were really banking on Marcus Freeman being able to shut down this offense and at least do what happened to Smith, where he only had 3 yards or whatever. I mean, Texas really took him out of the equation. I thought he was going
Yeah.
to do something like that, and even if it wasn't him and it was Egbuka, at least one of them. Like I feel like he was able. I feel like he should have been able to take away one of them, and I just really was really disappointed in the run defense. I mean, that was really the problem, because they couldn't make them one dimensional at all. It was just they could do whatever the fuck
Yeah.
they wanted, and that was the problem. And yeah, sure, you got a couple stops, but it wasn't because I just don't know if it was. I think it was because again, we kind of saw Chip Kelly kind of go a little conservative. I think he was kind of again kind of pulling that bullshit Michigan stuff that he was doing, but a little bit more out of the gun, not under center bullshit. Like I mean, it was kind of more conservative, but they weren't worried about them coming back. I didn't feel like.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it. Probably, very in there, they probably felt like it, but the defense stood up when they needed to. So yeah, I mean, Ohio State just obviously looked like the better team, and I would say pretty much since that Michigan game, they had looked like the best team in the country. They got rolling right at the right time. We talked about that being important when you go into the 12-team playoff. You got to get rolling at the right time, even if you're undefeated. Even if you're like Notre Dame, where you're going in after like a 13-game win streak, you still got to make sure that if you're not hot in that first round of the playoffs, you're done. I mean, we saw Ohio State beat probably the best three teams in the playoffs. They beat Oregon, they beat Texas, and then they go and they beat Notre Dame. This, I'll throw Tennessee in there too. I mean, this was a tough path, and I think we doubted them a lot of the way, and I think a lot of people did too. So they proved everybody wrong.
Yeah,
But I mentioned this earlier. I mentioned this in an earlier episode. Even if they win the Natty, you can't lose to Michigan.
yeah, Michigan fans are happy. They wanted Ryan Day extended. They wanted him to remain there because they said we continue to own you guys even if we're not winning national championships. We're owning you guys, and that's what matters to a lot of Michigan fans. Considering
Yep.
what they've got coming in recruiting wise, I don't know. I don't think Will Howard's gonna have an easy time with them either. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But overall, do you feel like the best two teams got to the end? Zach?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I
Yeah, I
mean,
really
yeah,
don't think so. I
I
mean,
don't think so either.
I think Ohio State should have been there. I think they looked like the best team in the country for most of the playoffs. If I'm being completely honest, it's I really think it's Ohio State and Texas. I mean, I think it had to be. I mean, after watching what all the teams did against Ohio State, it seems like Texas had the best time.
Yeah, yeah, I can't really argue with that. Um, yeah, I think that's probably pretty spot on.
But they
If
lost anyways.
yeah, they lost anyways. I think my Ducks are in the conversation. I just think that you have to look at just how this is so glaring how bad they played that it's hard to think about
Yeah.
the good things they did. But I think they're still kind of in that conversation where they could have, you know, if we would have played another time, it probably wouldn't have. I think it again would have been a good game. I don't think it would have been. I don't think it would have been as bad as it was the second go around. Like what I thought was gonna happen was this, Zach. I thought we were gonna have to play them in the beginning of the season, play them again in the Big Ten championship, and play them again in the national championship. I thought that was going to be what we were going to have to do, and I knew we weren't going to win all three of those. But I was really
Yeah.
hoping, to be honest, if I had to pick one, it would probably be the Big Ten. I really don't care about the Big Ten championship game. I really don't. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't give a fuck. Like
Yeah, it
good.
would have given you
Like
better
that.
seating in the playoffs
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
too.
I mean, good for us. Like, I mean, I'm glad that we got we got a championship in our first year. That way, we can hang our hat on that and just be like, yeah, there you go. I mean, but I guess that's the only good thing I can say about at least this year's Big Ten championship. I don't care about any of them going forward. I don't want to be in it. I mean, I guess I can be in it. I mean, I want to be in it because I guess if I lose, I'll still have a chance of getting in the playoffs. So I guess I want to be in it, but I don't really care about winning it. So I mean, I would have rather lost that game and won the other two, obviously. And I think that's where we could have been headed if it wasn't for kind of fucking Michigan.
Yeah, I think so. And not to mention, yeah, I mean, Ohio State finishes fourth in the Big Ten, and it's obviously we're gonna have to look at the seeding situation when it comes to the playoffs because in no world should Oregon have had that path. After winning and earning the number one spot for being an undefeated team, I don't see any way that they should not have the easiest path. They should play kind of. I think they should do it similar to how they do it in the NFL, where you just pull the lowest seed up to play number one. Whoever gets at whatever the lowest team to get out of the first round is plays number one, and you can go from there. That's how I feel like it should be, especially since you have these first round buys. Any team that gets a buy should get the benefit of that bye, which is rest, obviously, but also getting to play a terrible team when they come back. So yeah, if I were to restructure the playoffs right now, I would say that lowest seed out of those first round teams plays number one. The bracket is set from there. You go. I think that would have helped Oregon immensely because you're talking about playing. Let's see, who would have been the lowest team coming out of first round? Would it have been Notre Dame? Or would it have been Boise? No, because Boise was a first round bye team, so I guess it would have been Notre Dame.
Yeah, it would have been Notre Dame, and it would have been the winner of the Notre Dame Indiana game. Would have been who we would have played, which would have been Notre Dame. But I mean, they don't really. I mean,
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would have been a more entertaining game than Georgia with the backup quarterback. That's for sure. I think if you have Georgia with their backup quarterback going up against, you know, SMU in the first round, and you have Penn State, somewhere else, I think that would have been more entertaining to see how they would have done against SMU's starters, and then have them.
Hear me out. Let me give you another idea that I think could be even more interesting.
Or Tennessee.
And this is an idea that I've stolen from other tournament structures where so after the first round, right? After you get the bottom four out, you're left with 8. You're left with 8. I think starting with number 1, right? Starting with the number 1 team, they get to choose who they play.
Okay. Everybody gets to choose their opponent going down the line.
Number one gets to choose who they play. Number 2 gets to choose from them. Number 3 gets to choose from the remaining. Number 4 gets to choose from the remaining. Keep in mind, number 1 can challenge number 2.
Yeah, they can go ahead and choose that right off the bat. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can do that, but I think that would kind of give you a situation where you really want to get that number 1 spot because you can choose who you play in that first round going into the quarterfinals. I think that would just benefit so much in terms of watchability for some of these games, right? Because it makes it way more interesting when like the winner of that game gets to choose who they're gonna like play in the playoffs. Like these are the kind of things that get more people involved. Maybe that's a little too out there for college football to do, but I think that could be an interesting idea. They call it challenge matching, and I think it's an interesting way to set a bracket, I think.
No, I think that would be a very interesting idea because, like you said, we wouldn't have to do a traditional style.
Yeah, it gives ESPN another show that they can put on a Sunday, for everyone to watch. I think that's also something that the networks would like. So, I think that'd be really cool. Not to mention all the drama that comes from it. I mean, if Ohio State had that number 1 spot, you'd think they would have picked Notre Dame off the bat just off Ryan Day's hatred for Lou Holtz. I mean, that's the kind of thing I'm looking at, right? Like if OU is number 1 and Texas is number 4, I want Texas. Like I want to play them right then. And I think that that kind of could bring a new level of rivalry to the playoffs.
Yeah, because I think we would have probably picked SMU. I don't even think we would have picked Clemson. I think we would have picked SMU and been like, give us SMU. I mean, fuck, we might have even chose Indiana. I think that also would have been a possibility. I would have even picked Arizona State. I think that could have been something that we could have chosen, that we would have felt confident in. Georgia with their backup quarterback, I feel like we would have stayed away from that. Boise State, considering how that went the first time around, pass on that one. I think we wouldn't want to invite that. But I think those would be 3 options to look at. I don't think we'd touch Clemson. I mean, just because how squirrely they are. They're pretty squirrely, and I don't like that. I mean,
that's dangerous.
Yeah, so I think those would be the 3 that we would have probably discussed. Would have been SMU, Indiana, and probably Notre Dame. I think those would have been the 3.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that's just my idea. That's just a choice, but Ohio State wins its 6th national championship. Can I talk about it now?
So six national championship for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Zach, you're pretty upset about some of the stuff that people are talking about as far as these unclaimed titles that people are now trying to claim. Explain to me what like the problem is with this because I see this a lot lately.
Well, I'm fucking tired of the participation trophies. I mean, that's what I'm really tired of, right? Ohio State fans are going around saying they've won 9 national championships now. No, no. You know what a national championship is? It's when the Associated Press recognizes you as the national champion based off a game that was played that was considered the national championship. And that has only happened 6 times for Ohio State. It's happened in the BCS era. It's happened now twice in the playoff era, and it happened 3 times when AP was choosing who the national championship was. Never ever did it happen uh, when the coaches poll decides that you're number one, or the Wolf Report or whatever that is decides that you're the number one team in the country. Those are not national championships. They're not. Because if you really want to start playing that game, you're not going to like the results that other teams have. Ohio State is a very storied program, one a blue blood for sure. But 9 national championships, if we're including the ones that shouldn't be claimed, doesn't even stack up to some of these other blue bloods. I mean, you're talking about Alabama with like 18, Yale with 18. I mean, we don't have to talk about that, but Alabama with like 18, Michigan would have like 14. I mean, Oklahoma has 17. Like these aren't national championships. So I'm just tired of these fans claiming all these natties that they shouldn't be claiming. Just stick with the number you have. You should be secure with 6. That's a good number. Like 6 is a good number to be at. You're talking about being one natty behind what some people consider the greatest program ever in Oklahoma. You're talking about being, I don't know how many Bama has. I think they have 9 officially. Maybe it's 11, but you're right there behind some of the best programs of all time. Why you have to lie and act like you have more? I mean, we're not talking about UCF being a national champion, right? Like, no, we don't claim that. I don't think anyone is recognizing them as the 2017 national champions. You know why? Because Alabama would have beat the shit out of them. I mean, it's really that simple. And I think it's funny that Oregon fans this year are just kind of messing with Ohio State fans, saying that they won a natty because of the Wolf rankings or whatever they are. Because when you really look at it, technically, Oregon had the least amount of losses of anybody, and I think that's pretty much what this report is going off of. So the fact that Oregon had the least amount of losses, and they beat the national championship winner in the regular season. I mean, I think that you might have a small claim, right? You have a small little unclaimed natty that you can kind of throw around if
I
anyone really wants to get in the weeds with you.
Yeah, I'm having t-shirts made. Wolf Report champions.
Yeah, I
2020
think so.
2024 25. I'm making them myself. So if you want to buy them on the merch store, they'll be available. I'm buying mine.
Yes, that's funny
Because I
enough.
mean,
So if an Oregon State fan,
why
if an
not?
Oregon State fan ever comes out and is like, "In Oregon, you have just the same amount of natties we do," no, you don't. No, you don't.
I'm gonna have to look up and see if we have any more. I don't. Do we have any more Wolf?
I don't think
I don't
so.
think so either because I think, like you said, 13-1 is hard to beat when we've got the least amount of losses out of anybody that finished their
Yeah,
season.
Oregon has one unclaimed national championship from an NCAA designated major selector.
What year?
2024.
Oh, that's hey baby, Wolf
Yep,
Report champions,
that's the
baby, suck
only
my
one.
dick. Right, champions. Don't you forget, Ohio State frauds.
I'll give it to
We're
you.
we
I'll
we
give it to
we,
you.
we need to play the tiebreaker. Schedule it. Schedule it. Spring game.
Legitimately,
Spring
I
game.
kind of think that should. I do kind of think that should be a thing, right? Like if the team, if you beat a team that knocks you out of the playoffs, and that team ends up winning the national championship, I feel like there should be a tiebreaker somewhere because this is,
I mean,
it's
could you imagine 11 a.m. kick on Super Bowl Sunday, just like that extra game right before like the other big game? I mean, it would be probably. Because you don't want to have a Pro Bowl weekend because I know people don't watch the Pro Bowl, but I mean it's just sacred. You just can't do it. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
And I think if they win that game, right? Like if Oregon would win that game, I think you have a legit claim for co-champ.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think so. I think that's something they should look into, and I don't think that the players would be opposed to it. I mean, I think
No.
make it worth their time. Pay them if you want to extra. I mean, if you want to. I mean, I don't see a problem with that. Um, add an extra incentive there. But I mean, I don't know. It's a good idea. But yeah, kind of crazy how that goes. Look, I mean, the college football season's over, Zach. We've made it through. We've done it. We're hundreds of days away from the next one. But we'll be here to talk about it as far as off-season stuff goes, spring game reports, stuff like that. Obviously, still portal stuff to go over and signings to have happen. So plenty of to talk about over the next coming months. But right now, our focusing is going to be kind of on the NBA. We'll kind of verge into college basketball here and there, depending on kind of as closer we get to March. We'll give you kind of a breakdown of kind of where we see the season going and where we see some of these teams that you could probably put some money on to raise that trophy come March, and maybe even some first round teams that could surprise that people don't really have a beat on. We'll be able to kind of give you some insight on kind of where those look and kind of what matchups we hope to see heading into March Madness. So we'll keep you up to date with that. And obviously, like I said, NBA. Zach, give us kind of a Thunder update. We're over halfway through the season. Kind of give us what we're looking at as we head into the All-Star break here.
Yeah, so I think we're looking at 38-8 right now. Maybe that's the record. I believe so. 38-8. Maybe 36-8. I might be wrong. I don't know. It's one of those. Obviously, I think we're the best team in the league. We're still tied with Cleveland right now, as of right now, for best record in the league. But I think
36-8.
How
Yeah.
that 36-8. I think we're tied with Cleveland. I'm liking where it's going right now. I'm not too worried about Cleveland in terms of a finals matchup, so I'm comfortable saying that OKC is the best team in the league, especially considering the fact that they are hurt and they do not have their second best player who will come back before the playoffs happen. But since I would say in the last couple of weeks, the Thunder have been in a little bit of a slump. Let me just put it this way. So when either Hartenstein or Chet plays, when either of them plays this season, the Thunder have 2 losses, right? And I think those games are. It was one of our first ones against the Mavs where we had Hartenstein, but we didn't have SGA, I don't think. And then I think the other one was early in the season with Chet. I don't remember which game it was. But in games where neither of them play, when neither Chet nor Isaiah Hartenstein, so our bigs, when neither of them play, the Thunder are 6-6 on the season. So I think that says a lot about how important these two, not even together, just one of these two guys being in the lineup has to this team, right? It's really important to note that Hartenstein just unlocks so much for the Thunder when it comes to defense and offense, due to the fact that he can get a board and he's got size and can bully people down low if he needs to. Jay Will, I love him, but he's just not really an NBA, regular. I don't think he's a regular rotation player. He comes in a lot. I'm not saying that, but he's not the kind of guy that you can consider your backup center when you have Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren. So when you have one of those guys in, it just creates so many more opportunities for you on offense. But defensively, I think is where it's really felt. One, because just having that big body in the paint is important. You got to remember that Jay Will is only like 6'8". He's not 7 foot like Hartenstein or Chet. So having that presence in the paint is really important. But rebounding and just creating these extra possessions for yourself or preventing offensive possessions from the other team. I think we saw this the most against the Mavericks. This was also our problem in the playoff series last year in the second round that we ended up losing, in my thought, because we did not have a serviceable big with size to match with the 2 bigs that Dallas had. But the big problem is that we just can't get rebounds on offensively or defensively. You're talking about PJ Washington coming in and getting a 22-point, 19 rebound game, basically playing the 3. He's labeled as a power forward in those lineups, but basically as playing the 3 with SGA guarding him most of the time. that doesn't happen if Hartenstein is playing. That doesn't happen if Chet is playing. But also, I saw it against Utah. We barely beat Utah. We had to have an SGA 54-point game in order for it to happen, precisely because we didn't have those bigs. When you don't have Hartenstein, you don't have Chet. It just becomes really, really hard for OKC to score, because when you think about it, you don't really have to give J. Will that much attention. He's not that great offensively. He can give you a body on the defense, but offensively, he's just not really going to do much for you unless you can get him in open space.
Yeah.
And that's just not what's happening. And I think NBA coaches are smart enough to realize that they can come off of J. Will a little bit and pressure SGA a little bit more, and pressure some of these outside shooters a little bit more. Talking about Lou Dort this season, Wallace, Isaiah Joe, if you can put pressure on all of them on the outside, and they're not getting their buckets, you kind of force SGA to have those high scoring games. And I think teams are willing to do that because they haven't really seen SGA do it that much.
Exactly.
This is the first time we've seen SGA get above 45 points. I mean, he's hit 40 a lot. He has the longest streak of like 30-point games last season. He has the most 30-point games last season. He is the most consistent scorer in the league by far, but he's not the most prolific scorer in the league. He's not the most, he's not getting high volume games very often. I think he would if he needs to, and I think this was, the perfect example of that in the Utah game when he, just kind of had to take over on offense because no one else was hitting. But
exactly.
Offensively, I still think we look good. Hartenstein's coming back tomorrow, so I think this is, we're going to hit our stride again. We have a little bit more, the complete NBA team. I mean, you're basically talking about a team that was missing a center.
Yeah,
that's just not really. That's just not really going to work in most games. And I know that we had a small ball lineup earlier in the season too, and it was actually working pretty well, but. That's not really a sustainable model, and I think that we kind of just caught some teams off guard with it. Like we beat the Cavs with this small ball lineup.
Yeah.
We beat the Cavs with them, but the only reason that we did that, I think, is because they just weren't ready for the speed that small ball can provide. And they are such a big team, and they are such a big team and a slower team too, which I think kind of hurt them from that angle. But yeah, I still like our chances to win the finals. I think. Betting favorites now. I think everybody is kind of assuming that OKC is going to come out of the West. I'm still worried about the Mavericks. I'll say it. I don't want to. I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be insecure about it and say that I'm not worried about them at all. They're obviously, I think, our biggest threats in the West. And they we're season series. We've 1-3. Interestingly enough, the 3 games that the Mavs won, they did not have Luka. The one game that we won, they had Luka, but they didn't have PJ Washington. I mean, like this.
Yeah, weird. Yeah, just weird. Yeah.
It worries me. It really worries me that the only game we beat them is when they didn't have PJ, because it worries me based off the playoffs last year. A little bit PTSD, just a little bit.
Yeah, that's definitely understandable. I mean, right now, we would be playing them in the first round, or would we be playing the winner of the Suns Kings matchup? Well, they're the 9-10 right now.
So it'd be the winner of the. Well, it's not the winner of the 9 and 10. It's the what is it? The winner of the 7 and 8 becomes the 7.
Okay.
The winner of the 9 and 10 becomes the 8. Plays the 8.
Okay, so it was
that is the 8.
Okay, so we wouldn't have a chance right now.
It's 3 teams then. It could be any of those 4 teams realistically.
Yeah, so I mean, right now you're looking at Minnesota, Dallas, Sacramento, and Phoenix right now as possibilities for first round matchups. Yeah. Obviously, playing Dallas in the first round would not be preferable, but if you win that series, you're glad you get it over with early.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to play them. Like Luka's coming back. Like Luka's gonna be back within the next week, apparently.
Yeah,
but before the All-Star break.
But will they have to play them in the first round or later? Is what I'm saying.
I don't think so. I think it'll be later because, with Luka coming back, I think that's like the biggest thing here is Luka is going to win them more games than they've been winning. They've been terrible. I mean, seriously, they were 2-8 in their last 10, and the 2 wins were against the OKC. We're against OKC.
Yeah, in their last 10, they're
terrible against other teams.
They're 4-6 right now in their last 10 games.
Yeah. It's just not a favorable matchup with Luka coming back. They're gonna climb those standings a little bit. I think they get out of the play-in. I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I mean, it's obviously not out of the realm of possibility. I think you're
Oh,
right.
for sure.
Um, I'm looking right now at the standings. I know we're, as I said, over the halfway mark now. So let's go ahead and just play this kind of fun game here. What are two teams in the Eastern Conference right now that are in the playoffs right now that possibly could switch with some of these teams that aren't in? The last four teams you have right now for the East are the Magic, Hawks, Heat, and Bulls. And right outside the playoffs, you got Sixers, Nets, Raptors, Hornets, and Wizards. So, in your opinion, I mean, obviously you could say no change whatsoever, and those are the 10 teams. But just to play devil's advocate, which two do you think could fall out and be replaced with what other two teams that are not potentially right now in the playoff picture?
I mean, so right off the bat, I'm taking out. Um, I think this is the 10. I mean, right off the bat, I'm taking out Raptors, Hornets, and Wizards. Just no chance, right? Like they have no chance of getting in. That just is not going to happen. I look at I look at the Nets and I think they made some moves. Like they got D'Lo. Maybe they can catch a spark and maybe climb up there. I mean, they're only what? Let's see. They're 22 and a half behind. I mean, they're 5 games behind the Bulls. So like it could happen, right? If the
Mm-hmm.
Bulls kind of fall off a cliff, that could happen. The Heat obviously probably about to lose Jimmy Butler to Phoenix, which has implications in the West that we should talk about in a minute. But the Heat losing Jimmy Butler, I don't know if that really affects them that much, but they probably slip a little bit. So if it's going to be anyone, I think it's going to be the Heat or the Bulls falling out. I think the top 8 there, I think that's going to stay the top 8. Um, if anything, the Magic are probably going to move up. You know, I think the Magic can climb all the way to the top 4 as long as everyone is healthy. I think Paulo's been out a lot, but if Paulo and Franz are in, I think that's a
Yeah.
top 4 team in the East. What I think the surprising thing here has obviously been the Pistons, right? The Pistons, your guy Cade Cunningham,
Yeah,
Oklahoma
yeah.
State coming through. He's having a really really good season. I think he's averaging like 25, 9, maybe something like that. So I'm impressed with the Pistons. They're above 500, 23 and 21. I mean, they have. If I'm them, I'm feeling really good. I mean, you have the same record as some of these teams in the West that are people consider good. You have the same record as the Kings, and I think if the Pistons could say that last year, I mean, they would be so happy,
Oh yeah.
considering where they
100%.
were
Yeah.
at last
Yeah.
season. I mean, shout out the Pistons. Pacers kind of staying where they're at. I feel like they're always going to be in that realm, especially during this like Halliburton, Turner kind of era. This is I feel like where they're going to stay. Always a dangerous team. Obviously they climbed all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals last season, but I think we know that they're not going to be able to get it done. But these top 4 teams, right? These are the top 4. They're not going to move. These are the top 4. Who do you really have coming out? And like, before you say the Celtics, just give me who you think has the possibility to beat the Celtics.
I mean, I think the Knicks are looking pretty good. I mean, Cat's playing really well. I think it's a great addition for them. I think that's a great weapon to have. Um, I think that's a good possibility. Uh, I mean, Milwaukee's okay. I mean, it just it depends on what kind of Milwaukee team you get. They can hang in there and make it a series. I don't know if they pull it off. And I just don't see Cleveland being that team, to be honest. I think they're probably the biggest frauds in the top 4 teams. I think they're built to beat teams in the regular season, but when it comes down to really having to win ball games, do they really have what it takes? I think the playoffs will be a really good test for them because I think they're going to be a really high seed, and I don't think they're going to lose their first round series. I'm not saying anything like that. I just don't know if they're a team that if you put them in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics, that they're going to have. I mean, maybe it goes to 6 games. It's
Yeah,
it won't be a sweep, but it won't be something where you feel like Boston's not in control. I feel like the Knicks and the Bucks give you more of a chance of kind of tipping that meter because I think with Milwaukee it's the size, right? I mean it's just having Giannis
no, it's just
underneath. Yeah,
Giannis.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean
it's just
it's
Giannis. I mean, you
yeah.
can't count Giannis out. He can go in there and win a series, just alone. I do want to say that my issue with the Cavs, right, is that I don't think they have one guy that they can really go to because even people talk about Donovan Mitchell and he's obviously their best player, but Donovan Mitchell, I don't think he's a reliable
Well,
guy
the
in the
Thunder have
playoffs.
been able to take him away almost
Yeah,
every time they've played. So if you have teams that can D him up like we do, like even if it's just just him, I mean they like you said the other pieces I don't feel like are good enough to win you games like he can.
yeah. I mean, and you gotta remember the only reason the Thunder lost to the Cavs the first chance was Jared Allen had like 25, and I don't see that happening against the Celtics. The only reason he had 25 is because we didn't really have anyone guarding him. So I'm with you that I think the Cavs are probably the biggest frauds here. When I look at the Knicks, I'm looking at Cat and I'm thinking this guy's like kind of running in for MVP right now. Like he's a top 5 MVP candidate. He's all-star starter along with Jalen Brunson. I mean, those guys look dangerous, and I think if they can continue to mesh the way they have been, especially with Josh Hart, his role, you got Mikal Bridges now. I mean, like this team is looking like it's really good, and they really haven't played together that much this season.
Mm.
Obviously, they have the Villanova days, but like they have
Yeah.
not played together that much this season,
Well,
and I
and,
think
and
Cat has just unlocked so much for them.
and a Knicks Celtics Eastern Conference Finals would feed families. I mean, let's just be
I believe
honest. I
so,
mean
yeah.
that
Yeah,
would
it
I
would.
mean you have
We're talking
two
about the
big
Garden.
yeah
We're talking
two
about two gardens.
yeah two big cities. You're going not very far between each one. I mean it's a dream for people that cover basketball, and it brings back a lot of retro vibes as well. I mean, both of these teams have not been facing each other in any sort of significant manner in quite some time, so it would be a great rejuvenation of that. I look forward to that. So you think the Bulls are probably a team that could fall out as well as the Heat here, and then you think the Sixers and Nets are poised to kind of take those last two spots from them by the end of the time by the end of it.
Yeah, like if anyone, it'll be them, right? Like if anyone, it's probably the Sixers.
I mean, because obviously I'm still concerned about the possible Detroit fall off. I feel like they're good right now, but as you look at where they're at and how close they are to toppling down, to the 8-9. I mean, you're not very far away from that 8-9 spot.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something to think about as far as how long we've got to go and the possibilities of having a losing streak and then finding yourselves down where the Nets and Sixers are for a time and try to build yourself back up. It could be a little too late if Sixers get healthy in time and they're able to string off some wins. I feel like you could find yourself trying to play catch up possibility. I agree with you with the Magic. I think they're just a little bit too good, and I think that, like you said, Banchero coming back is going to be a big lift for them, and I think they'll kind of stay in the conversation. Hawks are another interesting one to me, Zach, because they're so hot and cold. I don't know where you go with the Hawks. I could see them falling out
bruh.
as well.
The problem with the Hawks, and it's same things happening this season. It's absolutely insane how this works, right? The Hawks, for some reason, are the most mid team of all time. The Trae Young era Hawks are the most mid team of all time. I mean, we see it every year. They have this weird stat where it's like in the last like 3 seasons, they're exactly 500. Like this season, they are exactly 500 right now. Last season, they had an identical home and away record. Like this team is so mid, it doesn't make any sense, and like they're gonna be like a perennial eighth seed, and that's a problem. If the East goes bad one year, maybe their even record will pull them up to like 6 or 5. But like we're looking at this team, and I'm just kind of like, I mean, what teams does this remind you of historically? Like when you're this kind of reminds me of the Kings a little bit, like in the West for a long time. It just felt like they were always there, but they were never really a threat. And then, like the Hawks, they're just always there, but they never do anything. And after that one season where they went to the conference finals, I mean, they have one of the greatest young players in the game right now, and I feel like they're just wasting his talent. And they just keep going 500 because they refuse to commit to a tank. I mean, what's going on here?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, just statistically, just an anomaly that probably won't be matched for quite some time. They do remind me, Zach, and this is a team I think you'll probably agree with me here. They do kind of remind me of um, the Chicago Bulls with like Derrick Rose, like those playoff
Oh
teams,
yeah,
like those teams, like he was so good, but like the rest of the team, like wow, dang, so good. Joakim Noah, pretty good. I mean, but like I think those teams, they would never get past the second round. Like it was just kind of they were just there, and they would usually win their first round series or at least make it a 6 or 7 game series before getting bounced. But they could never just get to the Eastern Conference Finals ever to even try to make a push.
Yeah, I think about the Raptors too. Like LeBronto, like they can never really make it to the conference finals because they always got knocked out by LeBron, if not earlier. I mean, so
Yeah, until Kawhi got that done.
it's constantly mid.
Yeah. So I mean that's
Embarrassing.
But when you look at the West here, Zach, when you tip over here to the West, what do you see here? I mean, you have, like I said, you have Minnesota, Mavericks, Kings, Suns, the last four. You have the Warriors on the verge. You have the Spurs there on the verge. I don't think you can really put the rest of those teams, as far as the Blazers, Pelicans, and Jazz, in that conversation. You could sway me a little bit on the Blazers if they really get hot, but they're 5-5 in their last 10. They are on a 4-game winning streak, which is something to kind of look out for. But I just don't see them being able to hop up there to that 10 spot over anybody that would fall out of where they are right now. Where do you look at as far as teams that are able to kind of flip flop here, and where do you see some movement possibly happening?
Yeah, so I mean, I think they're only the only real movement I'm gonna see is not gonna be down low. Like I maybe the Warriors, maybe the Spurs, right? But I'm looking like if any of these teams, if I'm gonna pick any of them to fall out, it's gonna be the Lakers, and it's gonna be, if I'm being honest, it's gonna be the Mavericks. Let me tell you why. If the Mavs can't get healthy really soon, I mean, they're going to fall out here. They've been playing pretty bad recently, not healthy. Luka's coming back. I hope it's not too early. And that's kind of my concern there is like, I think that's the only way they could fall out. But Lively's now out for a couple months. Like this team's really hurt. So they could definitely fall out of there. You got the Warriors just like a game and a half behind them. Um, and I'm looking at the Lakers, and I just don't think that they're going to be able to sustain the success they've had recently. I mean, they're 6-4 in their last 10. They're on a 2-game win streak. But I mean, when you're looking at the standings, I mean, everything is just so close here between 5 and 10, right? I mean, the difference between five and
Yeah,
10 is 2.5 games. Like these
it's
aren't.
tight. It's
This
it's
is a
real tight.
tight. This is a tight. It's a tight middle. Like you got the top. It's not really tight at the top. You got your top three. The Nuggets are there, but those aren't really in contention. I feel like the top four is going to stay the top four. I think
Yeah.
that is the top four in the West. Now, the 5 through 10, like I said, it's just so tight. My thing is, I think that the Suns are going to move up because I think it's almost guaranteed, right, that Jimmy Butler is going to be in a Phoenix Sun within the next couple of days, right? So
Possibly, yeah.
when that happens, we're gonna see probably Bradley Beal gone, which I think is good for the Suns because he's kind of been a liability on defense. He's not
True.
really doing anything on offense. And then you got Jimmy Butler coming in, who's obviously not a liability on defense and can give you just as much as he can as Bradley Beal can on offense. Even though he's not, he doesn't need to be a prolific scorer. He can be. He can lead a
Yeah,
team to
but
the
you
finals.
got
He's
Booker
going to
and
do it.
Durant, so you don't need it. Yeah.
Yeah, you got KD, and KD's been on kind of a tear this season, and you got Booker, so like he doesn't have to worry about that. So I think if the Suns make that move, if they go and get them a true center as well, because I mean they just don't really have anyone crazy right now. Nurk's just been shit.
Are they
So
looking at anybody right now?
I think they are looking at Miles Turner.
Hmm.
I think is the rumor that they can get Miles Turner, and if not that, they're just going to go for somebody that's not really a liability, right? You can go and you can get, um, just a I don't know who am I thinking of?
Boban,
Like,
give me
oh no,
Boban,
I mean, yeah,
Boban.
honestly, or like go poach Looney off of the Warriors just for like they're obviously not going to be doing anything realistically, so go get you a decent center and call it a season because
DeAndre
if you can
Jordan,
get Jimmy
baby.
Butler, not bad. I'm thinking like a Plumlee, just like
Okay.
an Olenek, like just
Alex
something
Lynn.
that
Alex Lynn.
I think he's a little too old now.
Oh, okay. Is he not around anymore?
He's not. He's around. I don't know if he might. I think he's still around. He's been on the Suns before actually, but yeah, I think they're center away, right? If they can get Jimmy Butler, I think the Suns could definitely slip into that top 5 or 6. Um, Timberwolves are kind of Timberwolves and Kings and the Clippers are interesting to me, right? Clippers have kind of been on a tear with Norman Powell averaging like 25, which is weird to me. And then the Timberwolves, they just haven't looked very good since Cat has been traded. Probably a bad move by the front office. I think you traded the wrong big. We talked about this before. You just got to get rid of Rudy Gobert. I know how valuable he is on defense, but I think the talent level just isn't there. And you can go get a decent lockdown defender in the 5 position. You don't need him to score. So I don't know why they wouldn't have traded Rudy Gobert in that situation. I think they're going to stay in this kind of 7-6 spot because Ant is Ant, and he's going to be able to win them games. And I obviously wouldn't want to play him in a playoff series. I mean, he can always go off. The Kings, Domantas Sabonis has been playing really well lately. Fox is obviously good. DeMar DeRozan has been scoring for them. But these are the Hawks of the West. I mean, they're just so mid. They're going to stay mid. And they're not going to be able to really do anything in the playoffs. I don't think they'll win a series. We're talking about if you're asking me who's getting out of the first round, of the playoffs, it's the Thunder, the Rockets, the Grizzlies, and the Nuggets. I don't think that any of these teams are going to be around for after the first round.
I don't know. Interesting to think about as we have hit over the halfway mark as far as games played. All-Star break coming up. I'm sure we'll have some thoughts after that's done. Of course, we'll lament about how bad the dunk contest is and all that stuff. I mean, we'll probably have a terrible time. Do we even know anything about selections for that yet, or when do we learn about that disappointing news?
All-Star?
Yeah, about not selection, but like dunk contest.
Oh yeah, they announced it. No one cares. It's some nobodies.
Is it already announced and no one gives a shit? Love that.
Yeah, it's already announced. No one gives a shit. But
let me see. I'm looking.
Let's just real quick review the All-Star starters though.
Yeah, go ahead.
They haven't announced the reserves yet, so we'll get to that. But the starters in the West, I don't think this is a surprise to anybody. I think Luka would have obviously got it if he hadn't been hurt, but Luka did not make All-Star starter this season, which I think is a shock to a lot of people. But other than that, not too much of a surprise. It is Steph Curry starting. It is SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, getting his second straight All-Star start. And then after that, it's Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Nikola Jokic. So, obviously LeBron, KD, Steph kind of get in for their, just legacy kind of votes, but they're obviously still really good in the NBA. And then, Nikola Jokic and SGA get their starting spots as the top 2 MVP candidates. SGA currently leading that race by a small margin. And then in the East, I think the East is pretty interesting. If I remember correctly, it is Jalen Brunson coming in at the 1 spot. The 2 spot is Donovan Mitchell, if I remember correctly. 3 spot, Jason Tatum. No shakeups there. 4 spot, I believe is... Oh, who is the 4 spot? Who is the 4 spot on the East? It is Giannis. I don't know why I had to think about that. That is Giannis. And then the number 5 spot is Karl Anthony Towns. So when you're looking at teams that got multiple guys on there, the only team that had multiple starters for the All-Star game was the New York Knicks with Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns.
I mean, it should be a good game. I expect the West to probably win. They seem to probably have the most depth, and I expect their backups to play a lot harder than the starters, like it normally happens. None of the starters usually play very much. Dunk contest participants, 3 have been announced. Obviously, there's more than 3 involved, but 3 have committed. Stephon Castle from the Spurs is one of the contestants, and then Mr. Bazelis from the Chicago Bulls, and Andre Jackson Jr. Is also a Bucks player that's going to be committed to the dunk contest. Matt McClung has said he's preying on it. 2-time dunk contest reigning champion. He does not know if he's going to come back, but it should be a shitty time. I won't be watching. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't care about the dunk contest. All-Star game though, they are doing that new format where it's like the 4 teams and then it's like tournament style kind of thing. Thunder for having the best record at the time of the selection. Obviously, get Mark Daigneault as a all-star coach, along with a Thunder assistant to coach the Rising Star teams. So I'm assuming that will be what is his name? The shooting coach. I feel like he'll probably be him.
Okay, yeah, I don't know his name.
He's a famous. I can't believe I don't remember his name right now. But the Thunder shooting coach will probably be the other guy there. So yeah, Thunder just lighten up the All-Star game. We'll see if Jalen Williams can secure a reserve spot. Not likely, but could happen.
Oh, so. Chipping England.
Yeah, Chip England. Yeah, there we
go. Well, yeah, well, that's your Thunder update, All-Star update, all that fun stuff. Where we've given you kind of where things could possibly shake out by the end of the season as far as playoff teams for each side. And that takes us into the playoffs that are continuing to happen and are happening this weekend. The NFL playoffs, baby! NFL playoffs. Look, last week we had some games. Yes, we did. We had some games. Texans, Chiefs. Chiefs get the win 23-14. Zach, a move on. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this one was a little bit controversial. You had a couple of calls there for Patrick Mahomes that a lot of people didn't agree with. Roughing the passer that, didn't look great. But let's be honest, the Chiefs were going to beat them anyways. I wasn't feeling too great about the Texans going into this, honestly. But Will Anderson kind of showed up. I think he played really well. But at the end of the day, I think the better team did win, despite the fact that they did get a lot of help from the referees. I mean, you can't call that roughing the passer. You just can't.
Yeah, rough call there. Some missed kicks, though, and some special teams problems as well for the Texans didn't really help them out either. That also played a big part in their ability to probably win this football game. And that leads us into Commanders-Lions. People thought it was a Lions year, baby, and Jaden Daniels said, no, sir. And the Commanders get it done by 14. 45-31. Lots of receiving yards for Amon St. Brown, lots of running yards for Jahmyr Gibbs, lots of throwing yards for Jared Goff, but not enough points against the Commanders. Zach, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think this showed Jaden Daniels' ability to win big games, first of all. I think, when we saw him beat the Buccaneers, it was kind of like, okay, Bucks were probably the weaker teams, that kind of were leading the divisions, right? But then we saw him light up the Lions. I mean, this guy comes through and he's dropping dimes to Terry McLaurin, deep.
Scary Terry, baby. My boy's an anytime touchdown moneymaker.
Listen, am I wrong for saying Scary Terry is the best receiver left in the playoffs? Playoffs that includes A.J. Brown, and a playoff that includes Devontae Smith. I feel like Scary Terry McLaurin is the best guy left. And we're talking about who is the best quarterback receiver duo that can possibly generate a shit ton of offense for you that no other team has right now. I think that's the Commanders. They have Jaden Daniels and they have Terry McLaurin. And to be honest, Jaden Daniels is playing like the best quarterback left in the playoffs outside of Josh Allen, in my opinion. Josh Allen's still playing really well, but Jaden Daniels is outplaying Patrick Mahomes right now. Jaden Daniels is outplaying Jalen Hurts right now. So I'm all in on Commanders beating the Eagles, coming up on this next matchup. But, talking about Commanders-Lions, the Lions, I think, just felt a lot of their injuries here, especially on the defensive front. You have injuries in the secondary, you have injuries up front, not to mention Aiden Hutchinson. That's a big one. That's a big one for the Lions. So,
yeah, no Malcolm Rodriguez. I mean, they were missing a lot of guys. And like I said, I think that the running game for the Commanders was almost as good as their passing game was. I mean, it was one of those things, Zach, where you look at the stats for this game, and Brian Robinson has 77 on the ground, Austin Eckler has 47 on the ground, Jaden Daniels has 51 on the ground. That's all front seven work right there, baby. That's your front seven on defense, Detroit, that you're missing big time. Major league there, and on top of Jaden Daniels throwing 1 yard shy of 300 yards. So I mean this is something that, again, it was a glaring problem and a concern heading into it, and you just hoped that the Commanders were going to turn into the young darlings that they were coming in, and they were like, no, we're for real, baby. We're for real. And the Eagles better watch out. They're going to have their hands full. But they did beat the Rams, Zach, 28-22. This game was close late, but it was just not enough Matthew Stafford couldn't get it done. Quiet day from Cooper Kupp, and the Eagles get the win on the back of Barkley's 78 and 62-yard touchdown runs in the snow in Philly. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this is one of those games that I think just kind of won in very, very few possessions, right? The Eagles did not play well at all. They played terrible, but I think this game kind of came down to just a few plays, right? The Saquon big run, especially there at the end, it was kind of one of those big plays. The touchdown to Dallas Goedert, is one of those big plays. But other than that, they don't really have a lot of offense for most of this game. They're kind of punching it in here and there, but outside of big explosive plays, they just haven't really been able to do much. Jalen Hurts busted off for one. That was a big chunk play. I think that was on third down. So, I mean, if you don't have those chunk plays, if you're LA and you don't allow those chunk plays, you have a real opportunity to win that game late. I'm real, my boss at work, he's an Eagles fan. We were talking about this, and he agreed that this game was just won in probably those three possessions: that Jalen Hurts run, that Saquon run, and that Dallas Goedert catch. Other than that, they didn't really have any offense going anywhere, and they had to pick it up in chunk yardage. So if I'm, the Rams, I'm happy that we kind of. If I'm not happy that we lost, obviously they're not happy, but you kind of held them really well, and the only reason that you lost the game is because you just couldn't stay disciplined in the most important moments. Saquon just kind of found the right lane. Secondary was kind of already committed to the middle of the field, and Saquon busted off into the left, so that they didn't really have anyone chasing after him. By the time he did, it was too late.
Yeah.
You can't let Jalen Hurts go off for that run there. I think it was a 50+ yard run.
It was a big one.
Yeah, you can't let that happen. You got to have someone on Jalen Hurts. You got to have a spy pretty much every play, because he obviously wants to roll out. I mean, this guy had like 120 yards against Green Bay passing. Yeah. He's not looking to throw the ball that much. And if he is, it's going to be a short yardage situation. So you got to have a spy there. You can't let that happen. A Dallas Goedert touchdown, that's just a good play. That's just good play calling. So I don't blame them necessarily for that one. But these are the kind of big plays that you can't give up, and why. And it's why it's so important to stay disciplined and not try to overcommit to any one side of the field necessarily. That's why you get explosive plays, especially running up the sideline like pretty much all of these plays were.
Yeah, and the thing is you can't really blame the weather for not being able to generate like more explosive, consistent offense, because Matthew Stafford threw for 324 yards. It wasn't like the conditions were preventing teams from throwing the ball through the air or anything. But when you have 200 yards on the ground from your running back, you don't need it. And obviously most of those, like you said, came on those chunk plays, which again proves that, again, for most of the game you're disciplined, and the 3 times you're not, whoopsie daisies. You got long touchdowns. And again, you were right. It was plays where motion was tracking the defensive back across the field, and the play went the opposite way. Wrong reads, being too aggressive, thinking you know what's happening, and them doing something else. It's those things that beat you, and that's what happened. And like you said, Eagles didn't play well. They're going to have to play a lot better if they're going to keep up with what they've got coming up this weekend against the Commanders. It should be a dandy, and trust me, we'll talk about it afterwards. This game was also a dandy. Bills-Ravens up in Buffalo, 27-25. Mark Andrews drops the 2-point conversion that possibly could have forced overtime. It was in his hands, baby, and he dropped it. Just a tough break for a guy that's been so good for so long for that team. Disappointing, to say the least, but I think the picture is a little bit bigger here, Zach. Overall, the Ravens just did not play as well as they needed to play overall to win this football game. And in fact, they were kind of lucky to be in this game in the position they were in, considering how that first half went for them. But they hold the Bills to 6 points all in the second half and do a better job defensively, outscore them 15-6 in that second half, but just not enough. What was your takeaway from the Bills moving on and advancing here after their divisional round win?
Yes, it's turnovers, right? The Bills were able to force 3 turnovers. That was a big deal. But more importantly than that, they're able to capitalize on those turnovers, and they're able to capitalize when they're on the field offensively. And Josh Allen just played amazing. And he's been doing that for the whole season. He would probably have my vote for MVP right now. If not him, it's Lamar. But Josh Allen had completed 72.7% of his passes while adding 2 touchdown runs. 2 touchdown runs. And you know, the Bills, you know, got through. I think my biggest takeaway from this is, like you said, the Ravens were even lucky to be in that position in the first place, to be able to have a possibility of, you know, tying the game there on that 2-point conversion. But I mean, what can you say? I think the conditions did get to Baltimore here. I mean, the ball was slick. Obviously, it was snowing there too. Shout out to them for being able to punch it in there. Mark Andrews kind of had a couple of, you know, bad plays in this game. He also had a lot of good plays. But the fumble there, I think it was the second or third quarter, the fumble, just bad timing on a catch where, you know, you just gained a lot of yardage, and, you know, you kind of put your team in a position to score. You turn over the ball. That's a big one. Can't let that happen. And then obviously the 2-point, it's just terrible. And I feel bad for him, because Mark has been such a good and just a perfect example of what, you know, you want an NFL player to be. I mean, this guy has never done anything wrong. I mean, he was great at OU. He's one of the best college tight ends of all time, in my opinion. He's one of the best. He's probably the best Raven tight end of all time. I mean, I don't count Shannon Sharp in that, because he wasn't really that good then. But
Josh Heat, baby.
Nah, I'm putting Mark Andrews over him, and my thing is, I feel like this play is going to define his career, because I don't think he can play for that much longer, if we're being honest. And this is going to be if he doesn't catch a Super Bowl touchdown pass next year, like, you know, this did really define his career as the guy that lost Baltimore, you know, their chance at a Super Bowl. If I'm Baltimore, I mean, the fans might just hate him so much, he might just have to let go of him. I mean, like, I don't want to do that if I'm Baltimore, right? Like, you don't want to let go of him, but like you said,
it's a bad game.
Yeah, dude, he had it. Like, he had both hands on it. I think me or you in that situation catch the ball. Like, I don't know.
I mean, it's coming at you
I don't
quick.
know how slick it was.
I mean,
it's
35, 40 miles an hour coming at you. I mean, it's your job. Yeah, it's your job. I mean, it is your job.
Every day you gotta catch
You make
that.
millions of
Like,
dollars
you
to
gotta
catch that. Yeah, you make millions of dollars to catch that. That's what they pay you for.
This was the equivalent. This was the equivalent of being down 1 in an NBA game and getting a steal. Getting a steal and missing the layup in transition, like the wide open layup in transition. That is what this is equivalent to.
Trying to dunk it and slamming it off the back iron, just, you know.
Like, he just made probably the worst mistake you could have made. And the thing was, if that mistake happened, you know,
one would have made up for the fumble too.
In second quarter, if that mistake happened in the second quarter,
no one's. Yeah,
I mean,
no one's
we don't even talk about it.
Yeah,
we don't even talk about it. But it's the fact that it happened on the 2-point.
Yeah, and it would have made up for his fumble. It would have made up for his fumble. I think that was another thing. I mean, people wouldn't have talked about his fumble if they would have won in overtime. They were like, well, it wouldn't have put us in that position, but we got the win, you know. But it's like, you know, and if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have got that 2-point conversion. But again, you got to remember, there was over 3 minutes left, and Josh Allen's got the football, even after they do get that 2-point conversion. Not really betting against Josh Allen the way he was playing that night. I still think they probably would have lost. And Tyler Bass was playing well, so I think he wouldn't have missed a potential game winner in regulation. So don't think that the Ravens technically lost that game, you know, right then and there. But it was a big blow for sure.
Yeah. I mean, this one was tough. If I'm a Ravens fan, that one hurts.
It does hurt. All right, let's transition here before we head into the sports book. We've got some, I mean, I guess this is technically a part of the sports book here. Longshot college football, next year national champions. It's never too early to start thinking about who's raising that trophy next January. We're going to give you right now, these are teams, again, that are outside of like the top 10, 15 choices of national title that have odds that are over plus 3,000 or higher, that we think could possibly get hot and make a run, something you can throw $10 on to maybe win you some big time money. You know, if you want to really have some confidence, throw a hundo on there, you could really win some money. But these are just some teams that we think might make a run. We're just gonna pick, you know, one or two and just kind of give you reasons why we think they could do such a thing. Zach, have you thought any of yours, or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought of a couple here.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So the first place I look, right, if we're talking about teams that are just outside of this top 10, like this top
Yeah.
10 area, top 15 area, and I'm looking mostly at bottom 25, to bottom top 25 to, even unranked teams, going out of the AP poll last season. I'm looking specifically at Nebraska. Nebraska is my big one because obviously you still have a 5-star back there, and he's not bad. He needed a year, I think, and he could be a lot better next season. So I could see them being really, really good, especially with all the talent that they pulled in. Matt Rule is still a really good coach, and all the talent that they pulled in from recruiting. And I think Matt Rule being an NFL coach really helps him in the NIL era. And he's able to kind of control a little bit more than maybe some other coaches are when it comes to NIL and players that have money, and having to deal with the implications of your players making a lot of money. I think Matt Rule is better at that than most coaches that you're going to see around right now. So I like Nebraska. Another team that I'm looking at that I don't know if they're in the top 10 or in the top 15. I don't think they should be. If they are, I'm just gonna say Miami.
Oh yeah,
I think you actually said
they're
Miami earlier, but
they're top
mm,
12. They're at plus 2,500. Top 12
yeah. So I won't
choice to get
talk
in
about
there.
them then. So let me throw another one out there that I think just like if I had to make a crazy pick, right, I'll go Texas A&M. Just
There,
because of
yeah,
the
yeah.
just because of the talent,
Top
just because of the
14,
talent.
yeah. Top 14, Texas A&M at plus 3,500. It's over the plus 3,000, odds mark, so it's eligible. That's definitely not a bad pick.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at. I think I'm locking in kind of like Texas A&M and Nebraska would be the ones that I would be comfortable throwing a
Yeah,
tenner on,
yeah.
to win the national championship.
Well, I'm gonna kind of go a different direction here. My first pick is Colorado. I like what
Yeah.
they've got coming up here. They're at plus 10,000. Nebraska's at plus 15,000. So that was his big one. It's definitely in that top 25 range. Colorado more in your top probably 20 21ish range here looks like. Um, they got the same odds as North Carolina and Louisville and Florida State. Those teams are also in that same odds bracket. But I just like Colorado's position because of the conference they're in, what did the Big 12 has coming back, and kind of where their position would be. They have a potential to get a first round bye this year. I think people kind of dismiss the fact that they have that shot of doing that because the only other teams listed here that are in the Big 12 are Arizona State and Kansas State, and they're right next to them. Those two teams are just sitting one notch ahead at plus 9,000 apiece. It doesn't look like the Big 12 have a lot of big hitters coming into next season, and that's why I like them to be the team that could possibly represent the Big 12 and give your ticket a chance to possibly get further along in that college football playoff scenario. Nebraska's a good pick, but you're going to have a whale of a season and beat teams that you haven't beaten a long time. That's going to kind of be your struggle with that. Um, and Texas A&M again, that's a team that they had a really good season last year and picked up some good guys. They know who their quarterback is, and there's a reason they're in that top 10, 15 conversation for it because they could sneak their way in to one of those bottom seeds in the CFP and make their way through and give your ticket a chance. So I think that's why I'm picking Colorado is because they have a shot at getting a path there. The other team I'm looking at, my second choice here, and this is more of a long shot. This is going to be the highest odds probably out of all four teams. And it's kind of a shocker a little bit, but it's a team that people need to be talking about that they kind of aren't talking about. And I'm gonna say it. I think it's Baylor. They're sitting there at plus 2,500. They're at plus 25,000. They're not talked about, but that's a team I could see again. They've got good pieces coming back. They got a quarterback back that looks like he's doing pretty well. They've got Dave Aranda who's coming back. They solidified that he's their guy, and I think that helps with recruiting as well. And because the Big 12 is, again, in my opinion, up for grabs more than it was last season. I mean, last season, me and you talked about that we thought we had a pretty good, handle on which teams were good and bad in that league, and it just blew up right in our faces as the season progressed. I think we're kind of in the same position now. You really think that Arizona State and Colorado and Kansas State and Utah and Iowa State are going to be, the top teams in this conference when you don't know how good Oklahoma State's going to be with a new quarterback and what they've got coming back. You don't know how good Baylor is going to be when they have experienced quarterback play coming back that's coming off of injury and somebody that has put up numbers. I mean, TCU, a team that, again, doesn't have much, but they have some good pieces coming back and they could be competitive. Texas Tech, they're bringing in tons of NIL guys. People are talking about them like they have the last 2 years, so I don't trust them at plus 30,000. That's for damn sure. I don't think they're good enough to get out of the Big 12, but I think that those teams could find themselves in that top 4 or 5 team conversation at the end of it. Considering what happened last year, I'm open to anything. So that's why I'm throwing Baylor in there. I think they could find their way into a Big 12 championship matchup, possibly with Colorado, and you could have possibly both of those teams in there, considering what their records could possibly be. Your thoughts on that?
It's kind of a long shot, I think, but I don't hate it. If you're talking about, picking a team that has like plus 20,000 or more odds, I
Yeah.
like looking at Baylor, and honestly, I like Tech at plus 30,000, but throw a little fiver on that one. Why not? I'll win you some big money. So, yeah, I like those picks. I think Tech is an interesting one to kind of throw out there if you're looking at Big 12 shakeups. But yeah, those are solid. Those are solid.
Yeah, they're very solid. And if you want to go long shot here, Zach, I'll throw out one team that I think could be, your cow here. Where is it? I'd be surprised they're not listed on here. Well, they're the same as Texas Tech. I thought they were going to be a little lower. I was talking about UNLV. I think they're kind of they're kind of that next Boise State selection. Boise State's at plus 20K, so that's also one of those you could throw out there because that could be your automatic bid. I'm never against going for the service academies either, considering how they ended their seasons last year. You could throw some money on Army and Navy and possibly get another auto bid in there. I mean, it's a possibility.
Yeah, I don't hate that, especially Army.
I mean, you're talking about plus 200,000 odds for Navy. I mean to win the Natty, obviously. I want to know when they come out what the odds are for some of these teams to just make the college football playoff because I think those odds will be more interesting to look at and I think they'll be fun. But that's just something I wanted to look at. So there you go, folks. There's just a couple. Obviously, this list will change as we get closer to the season. So we'll do it again, probably leading up to when we start breaking down each conference. We'll kind of revisit, but it's still fresh right now, and we're still reeling our first weekend without college football. So we just decided to kind of throw something in fun for you guys before we hit up the sports book that this week only has 2 games. This week, Zach, we're getting down to the nitty gritty here. Look, last week, sportsbook time. You had Texans money line that didn't go well for you. You had Ravens minus 1.5. That's an owie. Rams Eagles under, another ouchie boo boo. For you on that one. You did have the Commanders plus 9.5, and you had Notre Dame money line, so you do have 10 cents to play with. So you're gonna have to you're just gonna have to put a 10-cent parlay on it. We won't put individual 10 cents on the picks. We'll just do a 10-cent parlay on your picks. For mine, it went a little bit better. I had the Chiefs minus 8.5. I had the over in the Rams Eagles. I did lose my Ravens minus 1.5. I got my Commanders money line, and of course, I didn't get my Notre Dame money line. So I do have 41 cents. So I'll put 20 cents on each of these games coming up, and we'll do it that way. Zach, let's start with Commanders Eagles. You're really excited about this game. Over under here is 47.5. Eagles minus 6 is the line here. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, so I'm going to take Commander straight up. I really think that they just have the pieces to take the top off of this defense. Now, don't get me wrong, Eagles have an amazing secondary. I mean, you got Quinyon Mitchell back there who's in the running for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Not to mention the fact that, you still got Blankenship back there. DeJean has actually been pretty good this season, too. So I like what I'm seeing back there in the Eagles secondary, but I don't think any of them can guard Terry McLaurin. So if you can take Blankenship away from Terry's side of the field somehow, you can force him to double somebody else, maybe Brown, then I think you can really take the top off of this defense. But I'm also looking at that run game. I don't think the Eagles' run defense is that good. So I'm looking at Like you said, Eckler getting some runs, Robinson getting some runs. I think Robinson can kind of really blow this offense, wide open for Jane Daniels to be able to really, make some, like you said, keep a two-dimensional offense where you don't have to worry about, you know, them rushing the passer every time because they will be worried about Brian Robinson in particular. So I think the Commanders can come out and win this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick the under here, under 47.5. I think the reason I'm doing that is because I think that, like you said, I admire the Eagles' defense and what they're able to do as far as trying to limit teams and keep them, like you said, one dimensional. Um, and I think that it's going to be rough sledding. I think this is going to be a low scoring game. But I mean, in the end, um, it's going to be who turns the ball over least and who is able to defensively, force the most three and outs here. I know that sounds like the most obvious coach talk ever, but that's a hard task for either team because of the way Saquon's playing and the way this offense for the Commanders is playing. It's a tall task to stop these offenses, which is why a lot of people love the over. But I think it's just one of those games where I think the coordinators will get a little bit too in their head. And I think also, like you said, these are two good teams that have kind of good against good here. It's the Eagles defense against this Commanders offense, and then vice versa. It's this running game of the Eagles against one of the most mid running defenses in the league. So I mean, it's definitely going to be what people think will be a back and forth. But every time we've thought we've had a shootout in this playoffs, it's been the exact opposite. So that's why I'm going with the under.
Yeah, here's the thing. You gotta remember these teams played each other twice already in the regular season, being in the same division. They split the series. It's 1-1. So either of these teams can win. If you're putting real money on this game and you're not looking at individual stats, if you're putting real money on a winner or a cover, I wouldn't, because I think this game isn't predictable at all when it comes to who's going to win or what the score will be. I think that it is really predictable on who's going to get what stats, and I think Saquon, if you can get a Saquon over, pull it. I mean, your thoughts on that? I mean, like if Saquon has a
Yeah.
line of about 120, I feel like you got to pull that over.
Yeah, I kind of agree. He ran for 146 and 150 against this team respectively both times. Look, the second time it was a shootout that Washington won 36-33. It was a high scoring affair. I just don't see that happening. I see it more like the first time where the point total was 44 and the Eagles won 26-18. I feel like you're gonna get a game more like that than you will a game that's both teams in the 30s. That's just what I think as far as that. But you have to, if it's 120 or something like that, yeah, smash the over. I guess I can look and see what the rushing prop right now has Saquon Barkley at yeah, he's got 120 at minus 156. So he's expected.
Golly.
You don't get into the plus numbers until you hit 140. So if you think you can get 140, it's at plus 128. Everything else is, you know, 130 is minus 108, and rushing for 120 is at minus 156. So they think he's going to at least get over 120 yards easy.
Yeah, I can't believe I pulled that line out like that. It was right.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's I mean, that's what I would put. I mean, he rushed
Put
for
me in
one.
Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Hurts, I mean, they think he's at least going to run for 25. Jaden Daniels, they have him rushing for at least 50 yards. They put Brian Robinson's 25 plus more at minus 364. You think Jaden Daniels runs for less than 50?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, you're
I'll
probably,
see that happening against this defense.
yeah. I mean, very, very possible. The other game we have, Zach, is Bills Chiefs. Chiefs are 1.5 point favorites. The total here is 48.5. Obviously the Bills won the first matchup um, uh, with uh, with these two teams, and it wasn't really a close game from what I recall.
Yeah,
And it's it's something that people are going to be watching for is how competitive this game is, considering what happened last time. 30-21 was the final score, and it wasn't even as close as that score kind of expresses. Again, it was a home game for Buffalo, which I thought played a huge part. Now the roles are reversed. It's a home game for the Chiefs. I think that's a big, big, big deal. What do you think about this game, and who are you going with?
Yes, I mean this one's obviously just gonna be a. I mean, it's if we're being honest, it's Bills versus the Chiefs versus and also the refs. I mean, this one, I feel like the Chiefs are kind of getting. I'm not a guy that thinks that everything's rigged. I'm not, but I think that the Chiefs are just getting some of these favorable calls that I think we saw with the Patriots, right? We saw that with Tom Brady, where he gets you can't really touch him. He will get that rough in the passer if you're not careful. So I think the Bills got to be prepared for that, right? I think you got to be ready to back off of Patrick Mahomes a little bit. But as much as I hate it, I think I have to take the Chiefs here, and I'm just going to take the Chiefs money line,
Okay.
for the simple reason that I don't know why it is, but they just keep winning. The team, when you look at it on paper, really isn't that great. They still have a lot of pieces on defense, not to mention the fact that Hollywood is playing now, I believe. And they have Xavier Worthy, so like you got a lot of offensive pieces that can still run around. For the Bills, right? I'm looking at Josh Allen, and I feel like this is going to have to be kind of a hero ball situation, where you don't really have anyone elite on the receiving end. You got Shakir that you're kind of throwing the ball to a lot. Other than that, I'm not loving what I'm seeing from the Bills from that front. It seems to just be Josh Allen making good plays and Josh Allen knowing when to break out and scramble and kind of dive for those plays when he needs to. It just seems like they are always fighting for third and short, on pretty much every drive. It feels like it's just third and short, got it
Yeah.
right over the line. Third and short, got it right over the line. So I think if the Bills can continue to do that, and can control the ball on offense and just have these long drives, and keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands, and your defense can play decently because they do have a great defense. That's the strength of this Bills team, I think, is the defense. And their ability. I mean, they just forced 3 turnovers against the Ravens, and their ability to kind of just shut down sides of the field with their
Yeah.
elite secondary. So I think watch for them to be able to shut down Xavier Worthy, to be able to shut down Hollywood Brown. I think this is going to be a good matchup. But I personally am going for a Chiefs Commanders Super Bowl here.
Chief Commander Super Bowl, would it feed families? I don't know. I think a lot. I think the Chiefs would probably be favored by, yeah, touchdown or more probably. I mean,
It'll be like a
it was
10.5
yeah.
line. It'll be like
It'd be
minus
a
10 and a
pretty
half.
yeah. It'd be a pretty big line. Um, but look, I mean, my opinion on this. You talk about the refs. Look, the ref that's going to be refing this weekend. He's only thrown three roughing the passer penalties all season long. When he has refereed a Chiefs game with Patrick Mahomes as a starting quarterback, the Chiefs are 6-6. So right now, I don't know how much I'm leaning into them going to get a lot of favorable calls here. Now, if it does happen, I think it leans more into what you're saying, where this conspiracy, riddled, community that exists when it comes to professional sports has some leverage here because of the fact that what I'm spewing would indicate he's not going to get a lot of calls. If he does, and it would indicate there's something bigger going on. Correct? If you're going to use your conspiracy brain there. Um, Look, I said it before. I'll say it again. I just can't bet against Patrick Mahomes. I just can't anymore. I mean, I've learned my lesson. I just, you can't kill him. I just don't know. I just don't know what the deal is. I mean, I, it's domination, right? I mean, it's almost Tom Brady 2.0,
Yeah.
only just to a more athletic extent, I guess. And I don't really think the Chiefs' defenses have been on par with any of the Patriot defenses that really won anything. I think this has been more of Patrick Mahomes and the offense finding ways to win than it has been the defense keeping them in games. Now, Chris Jones has been on a tear, and he seems to make these plays. Like, he gets sacks, but the thing that makes Chris Jones special to me, Zach, is he gets these sacks in situations where the other team can't afford to get sacked. So it's like 3rd and 8 with 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Here's Chris Jones with his first sack of the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, he gets there when it matters most, and I think that's what makes this Chiefs defense good. Is it's not really them as a whole, it's just them in moments. Like, they just play well in certain moments. They don't play usually good defense from first snap to last snap. It's usually very average to below average defense. It's more of forcing turnovers and making the one big play than it is a collective effort to stop drives and force punts. At least that's how it seems through my eyes. So give me the Chiefs money line. I just can't pick against them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's you're right. You got to learn your lesson there.
So those are the picks. We'll have them posted. Zach, anything else you want to say before we get out of here? I mean, we've had a good episode here. I think we've given college football as many roses as we can give it. What was your favorite moment of the college football season as a whole? Give me one moment that you really enjoyed.
So personal favorite moment, I'll do an OU moment. I'll do a non-OU moment. All right.
Okay, okay.
So my personal favorite moment OU wise had to be the Kip Lewis interception against Alabama. Pick six, runs it back, basically seals the game for us. Love that game. It kind of it was a little bit of a bright spot in a terrible season by OU standards. I mean we're 6-6, but like terrible season by OU standards. So that was fun to be able to beat Alabama there, and kind of get that. We beat Bama the last time we had played them when it was Baker, but we had Bama had obviously been just like running away with the dynasty. So it's nice to have that rematch, and looking at that rematch in the preseason, looking at it halfway through the season, we're like, fuck,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
gonna get destroyed by Bama, and then come in there, win 24-3, defense just shuts them down. It was amazing. So that was my personal favorite moment from an OU season. From a non-OU perspective, and this is still almost an OU perspective, but I'm gonna have to go with Ohio State, Texas. Jet Sawyer forced strip sack fumble on Quinn Ewers, takes that back. I mean, that's not going to be a hot take. That is not going to be a hot take. I think a lot of people are going to pick that as their favorite moment. So for me, it's that, or it's the Ryan Williams catch where he did something
Against
that I think
Georgia, yeah, the
yeah,
spin and that. Oh,
yeah, like the spin and then the back, and
yeah, that was
yeah, that
special.
that was amazing,
That was
and that was
special.
special. And like, if I tried to do that, I'd probably tear both ACLs, or at least one MCL, probably both PCLs. Like this, like I don't know, and that's the youth right there. That's the benefit of being 17, is being able to do stuff like that.
Not tear everything, and you tear your VHS, DVD, all that stuff. Um,
Hmm.
Look, my personal favorite Oregon Ducks moment of the season is Will Howard not realizing how much time is left on the clock. I think
Yeah,
that's that. I mean, hands down, probably that, because the rest of our season just kind of went too smooth. It went the way it was supposed to go. We didn't have much adversity. I thought the Wisconsin game was a little. Penn State, Penn State Big Ten championship, but as far as favorite moment, I had to be that. It just had to be beating them. I think that was just kind of, and to be honest, it was kind of a debate between that or the Oregon player that picked up the obvious fumble that we dropped before getting to the end zone against Boise State. He picked it up right afterwards, which was why they didn't call it a fumble. They didn't explain it, but like that, our player picking it up immediately after he dropped it in the end zone, also standing in the end zone, made it to where it didn't matter that he dropped it beforehand. But I said that could have, when that moment happened, I said that could have saved our undefeated season, and it did until we got to the playoffs. So I'll bow
yep.
down for that prediction. But non-Oregon moment, my non-Oregon favorite moment. Look, man, for me, I think it's just Vanderbilt beating Alabama. Just the way they did. I just
Oh yeah,
I think that I
yep.
think that was just special, in multiple ways. Just the way they got it done, defense and offense, just really took that and just put it on its head. I think it was just a great moment, in itself, and I really just enjoyed. Watching that game from opening snap to final snap, and they were just a fun team to watch in those big games. They didn't have as good of a season as you would have thought they would have had the rest of the way, considering that. But I think we all kind of knew that if this team was going to play a really good game, it had to be that against a big team, and they did it. So I enjoyed that. But episode 93, Zach, it's over. We got through it. And we'll have Super Bowl to talk next week. Anything else you're looking forward to talking about next week before we get out of here?
Man, just seeing where the Thunder are at.
That's right, baby. For us here at the St0ner Sports Radio Studios, keep stick on the ice, and as per usual, good night, Canada.